Rick, it was 4 years ago when you told the story, very emotionally, about the struggles with your daughter. And you talked about how prayer answered those struggles. This is a difficult question to ask, but is there a time when you cursed God? Cursed God, when you felt that God did not answer you, even with a prayer, even with the conviction, even with the belief?
I often give a testimony talking about how I came to the United States Senate and found the Lord. I know most of you don't think he's there, but he is. And it's really true. I really became alive in my faith and my relationship with Jesus Christ when I came to the United States Senate. And two people had a profound effect on me, including a third, which was, of course, my wife, Karen, who walked on that journey with me. But when I did find the Lord, I found myself in a situation where I felt called to take up issues that I vowed I would never do before, and one of them was the issue of life. And it just so happened the issue of partial birth abortion was on the floor of the Senate at the time, and President Clinton had vetoed it, and the person who was supposed to override that veto, fight for it, was the senator from New Hampshire and was up for re-election, and he didn't want to do it because New Hampshire's a tough state, as we all know, on that issue. And so no one else wanted to take it, and I was growing in my faith and feeling called to do something, and long story short, I ended up managing a bill after having spent 5 years in the House and Senate and never said the word abortion, refused to say it. But I walked that journey in a lot of faith, trying to follow what God was calling me to do. And I'll never forget the last day of the vote, Dianne Feinstein got up and talked about how we had to keep this procedure legal, because late in pregnancy, sometimes women would find out that their child would have no eyes or no ears, or be blind or lame, or have a cleft palate. I mean, she listed all these things. And I got up and said, my wife is pregnant, 20 weeks old, and we have a sonogram in another few days. And I don't know whether our child is perfect or not, but they're no less of a child if they have some sort of disability. Well, a few days later, we lost that vote. I poured everything into it. I never felt better that I was doing what I was being called to do. And we went to that sonogram, and I'll never forget the sonographer going over Karen's abdomen and looking up to us and saying, "Your child has a fatal defect and is going to die." Our little kids were there at the time. They didn't know what was going on, but they knew their mommy and daddy were crying. We rushed out of that room and got into the car, and I tried to go home, but I couldn't. All I could do was cry and speak bitterly to a God who I thought was calling me. And this was his answer. He was going to take my son. So no, I was not happy with God. This newfound friendship was not as easy a course as I thought. We did everything we could. We resolved we would not lose our son. We had intrauterine surgery, something very experimental, and it worked. Except 3 days later, Karen got an infection and he was delivered at 21 weeks. We were blessed he was born alive. And we had the opportunity to hold him for 2 hours in which he knew only love. Then he passed in our arms. I was very angry with God, but I was blessed. I was blessed with a wife who, while angry, poured that anger out on pages in letters to him, explaining her love, our love for him. And I was equally blessed to have a mother-in-law who encouraged her to publish that book. And that book took pain and horror and turned it into something beautiful. The book Letters to Gabriel sold thousands, tens of thousands of copies, saved I don't know how many lives. People wrote us and told us that what we went through, our pain, gave them the courage to save the lives of their children. And so what I learned was that if you are faithful, God will be faithful.